The Kenyan tech scene is thriving, and at the forefront of this growth are two powerful forces, fintech and e-commerce. On how these two is shaping Kenya's digital landscape and driving the nation towards a more inclusive and prosperous future, here's more.
I think when you think about the fintech boom in Kenya, we know that for a fact right now, that's probably the sector that gets the most foreign investment, especially for the many startups and innovators operating in the market. And underpinning all of this, we know that M-Pesa is a platform that is used by millions in Kenya, and probably the very first fintech through Safaricom that has made a significant step in the market. Without mobile money, to be honest, a lot of the fintech propositions that are currently coming to market and the startups operating in this space would not exist. And just coming from the panel that we had here, the Connected Africa Summit, we had Esther Watitu from Safaricom, who's the head of financial services there, tell us that there's almost 100,000 developers creating all sorts of value-added propositions on top of M-Pesa. So with the fintech space in Kenya, we do know that Kenya is one of the guiding lights on the continent. A lot of innovation, a lot of companies, some companies like Cellulant, for instance, Pesapal and others have been operating in this space, creating incredible propositions that are serving both the consumer and businesses, providing very interesting possibilities in terms of what you can do. So everything from farming, providing loans to different customers for different needs, both at the merchant and individual level. We're seeing innovation around areas like insurance services. You have things like the DigiFarm from Safaricom that helps farmers to access inputs in a marketplace to buy and sell products. So there's a lot of innovation around fintechs, and you find that increasingly there's a lot of evolution in terms of the services and possibilities that exist. But most importantly, a lot of these are channeled through the utilization of mobile money and, of course, mobile devices.
Indeed, and when it comes to e-commerce, what are some of the factors behind the rise of e-commerce in Kenya? And also maybe where are we at in terms of that?
I think the key moment that we need to refer to is probably the transformation that was driven through the advent of COVID-19. COVID-19 for me was a moment, of course, that was very hurtful to the economy in terms of how people suffered. But more importantly, for the very first time, as somebody who's been a practitioner in the e-commerce space for over 25 years in this market, we saw for the very first time Kenyan consumers actually taking to e-commerce at scale. Because for the very first time, it was the way that you could purchase products and services without having to leave your home and staying safe. So COVID-19, when we talk about digital transformation and of course fintech and financial services through mobile devices, really accelerated. And more importantly, when you talk about e-commerce in Kenya, the majority of transactions happen as a result of mobile money and more specifically M-Pesa. So we are seeing this sort of unified or connected scenario where whether it's food delivery services, buying products and services online, or paying for a myriad of different things, including government services, we see that e-commerce is massive in this market, particularly from a mobile money perspective, and that is how the majority of fintechs are actually operating in the market.
And every solution, every problem rather has its own solution.
Correct.
But let's talk about some of the challenges that remain when it comes to having a fully digitized Kenyan or country, and even Africa as a whole. Let's talk about some of these challenges that remain here.
So some of the challenges we face, of course, in a market like ours is the digital divide, especially for those citizens who may be in areas where they do not earn a lot of money. When they're trying to access digital services, you might find that the mobile networks are not as accessible. And even just things like digital literacy, the ability to actually use these services for a big part of the population may not be easy to do. And don't even mention things like language barriers. Many people in rural parts of the country may not even speak Swahili and therefore use vernacular. So when you think about all these different considerations, whether it's connectivity, whether it's digital literacy, whether it's even the ability to afford or buy the devices in a way that they can use them, those are some of the challenges that we see. But we also see that the government and even providers like Safaricom and others are increasingly going out to the market and increasing coverage. And also, as was mentioned in our panel a short while ago today, transactions below 100 shillings are free. At the merchant level, transactions that are under 200 shillings are free. So we can see that they're cognizant of the fact that when it comes to serving those who are at the bottom of the pyramid, many fintech service providers realize this and are making sure that even if those transactions constitute as much as 50% of the overall, they're foregoing profit at that level to make sure that they're as inclusive as possible for the average Kenyan.
And policies also come in as a challenge. So where can we say Kenya is in terms of the policy, friendly policies, and also the regulatory framework in general?
Well, let's be honest, Kenya runs on M-Pesa, right? And if you think about regulatory considerations, the government did not clamp down on Safaricom and M-Pesa when they first launched. It is only for that reason that the government took a light touch towards regulation on mobile money and more specifically M-Pesa, that it grew to the extent that it did. Regulations actually trailed and eventually became into effect. However, at the end of the day, if you look at how critical M-Pesa and financial services are when it comes to mobile technology in this market, it's very much endemic to everything that we do. We pay school fees, we pay for our rent, we pay for food, we pay for our transportation using M-Pesa. And more importantly, when you look at it from that point of view, Kenya, I believe, has been very, very good in terms of not being overly strict or punitive when it comes to regulations. They've allowed a lot of these technologies and these new things to flourish in a way that actually benefits the entire country.
Yes, indeed. And some of the, right here at the conference, at the summit, a lot that has come out is knowledge, common knowledge sharing. So what can Kenya borrow from other nations that are here? Look at Estonia, case study of Estonia, fully digital country. So what lessons or what knowledge sharing can Kenya borrow from these other African countries?
I think there's a lot that we can learn and borrow from. I mean, already Kenya, when you think about the continent, is one of the guiding lights when it comes to digital transformation. Together with South Africa, Nigeria, Egypt, markets like South Africa, we are definitely one of the epicenters of innovation and adoption of digital transformation at scale. What I think we can borrow is we can look at some of the areas of best practice and excellence that exist in those markets and see what we can also share and learn from them. As much as we are leaders in mobile money and fintech spaces in this market, but what else can we do around other spaces, like you mentioned, Estonia being a fully digital economy, to also borrow and learn from the same. And the mere fact that today the Estonian government is also bringing in entrepreneurs, in fact I have a meeting tomorrow with one of them, shows that this cross-pollination is going to start happening so that we can borrow their best practices from there, we can adopt some of the things they've achieved there and adapt them and customize them to our markets. And vice versa, they too can also benefit from understanding how we've made such big strides when it comes to areas like fintech and mobile money and other innovations that exist within our market. So I think that cross-pollination is happening. Of course, again, within regulatory frameworks that make sense. But the reality is that today, Kenya, as one of the innovators or the most progressive markets from a digital perspective on the continent, is definitely one of the places that people are looking towards to understand and invest in to take full advantage of the opportunities on the continent.